3 decades of doing this, I still get nervous. I get nervous because I understand the gravity of the situation that we have here. You have a young man whose future is on the line. And I say that for the reason that we need to make sure that we take a good look at this. And yes, sometimes nitpicky things matter. They simply do. And another thing the council indicated that I circled was what's really going on. What's really going on here? I'm going to explain it to you. I'm going to explain it to you and kind of dovetail it with the evidence that you saw. So, all had your notepads with you, and you've been able to take notes. So, we don't have to rely just upon me taking notes and relaying it to you. You guys have your own notes, and I've watched you. Many of you have been taking very good notes. You've been paying attention, and that's exactly what I appreciate about a jury. Now, period of time, at least a year, by the time of last year at this time, maybe even longer, maybe even a couple of years. And they knew each other by way of his very good friend was in a relationship with her. Her really good friend, another Alexis, was in a relationship with Mr. Anderson. And they'd broken up maybe about a week beforehand. And you're gonna get the exhibits, you're gonna be able to read them. You've heard them read out loud to you, we've discussed them a bit. But this is an individual that wanted to give comfort to Chase. You know, I'm sorry about this, I'll see if I can get to the bottom of it. Was offering him comfort. But at some point that comfort took a turn. Remember what it was? When it took a turn, it became, I love you. Heart emojis. I'm gonna come over and spend the night, hang out with you. Okay? That's when it took a turn. That's when this young lady decided that she was interested in having a relationship with Mr. Anderson, a sexual relationship. And he says, I love you back. They have some more kind of congenial conversation between them. And then it took another step. Accelerate this relationship. And how did she do it? Remember how she accelerated this relationship? She Snapchatted. She sent a naked picture of herself. Think to yourselves what perception you would have in your mind if your good friend who has said, I love you, and come over and spend the night, they all of a sudden start talking through, for lack of a better word, a back channel avenue, as opposed to texts. Something that a boyfriend isn't going to find out about. Something that her other friends aren't going to find out about. Because she wanted to have a sexual relationship with Mr. Anderson, and she didn't necessarily want everyone to know about it. Particularly not her boyfriend. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the boyfriend because there's some question as to whether or not how much he was in the picture. You know, she tells some people that, tells the officer that they've been broken up for a month's time. This boyfriend isn't in the picture. But she tells on the stand, oh, yeah, it's kind of murky. See if you guys can remember what you got from her on the stand as relates to whether or not she was with a boyfriend. He probably still thought they were boyfriend, girlfriend. She may not have, but for whatever reason, she didn't want him to know that she was going to start up a relationship with Mr. Anderson. Was it wise of Mr. Anderson to 2 days after, or less than a week after he breaks up with his girlfriend, that he's going to, has desire to sleep with his good friend's girlfriend? Was that good judgment? No. No. Mr. Anderson, however, is not charged with having bad judgment. It's unfortunate that he had that kind of judgment, but he's not charged with that. So, what happens when she sends him a nude picture of herself? He writes back, I presume what a lot of 21-year-old young men would write back, hot. Yeah. You're putting it out there. I'm interested. I'm answering the phone. Okay? That's what's going on. You want to know what's really going on, as Mr. Vitasovich asks? That's what's going on. She sends another. Okay? Game on. two are obviously gonna make arrangements to get together. Who's the aggressor in that? Who's the one that first says, "I love you"? Who's the one that first says, "I'm gonna come over and spend the night"? Was it Mr. Anderson? It was Miss Mitchell. So then, through Snapchat, they start making arrangements that they're going to get together. And they do that. He comes over to, now think about this. This is something that bugged me while this was going on. Where did he come and pick her up at? Remember where she was living? She was living at her maybe or maybe not boyfriend's house, living with his mother. Does he go over and pick her up at that place? No. Why? Because this is a relationship that was supposed to be under the cover. We weren't supposed to know about this. So she makes arrangements to be picked up at Rihanna's house. And we know that because Rihanna says, "Yeah, we're king and daughter." I think she even said that's where he came and picked her up. And what happens, this is the first time they lay eyes on each other when, after the sexting goes on, after the communication goes on, what's the first thing they do when he picks her up? They kiss. Okay? That's the first time he kisses her. That's, that's the spark. And throughout the rest of the evening, remember what Jace McGarvey said? She was sexually aggressive towards him. Okay? Towards him. She was pulling him by the hand, different places. She was kissing him. She was, I think his words were, she was all over him. They make arrangements to meet. She wants to spend the night. He picks her up, they kiss, they go out in public, they have a public display of affection, they come back to the house. This is after they've had a few drinks. And, I know marijuana is legal, it's not that, to a lot of people it's not that big of a deal, drinking's not that big of a deal, but these are young adults that, engage in this kind of activity. And so that's what they did. They're all partying, they're having a good time, and Mr. Anderson, you heard him testify today, and I went through this, maybe to your, detriment, very methodically, and maybe I took too much time to do it, and I apologize if you guys were tired of listening to it, but it needed to be done, because that way you heard Mr. Anderson say exactly what happened, step by step by step by step. He didn't have any blackout about the stand, or while he was on the stand, and he didn't, say, well, it could have happened or might have happened, or gosh, I don't know if it happened. And I'm going to talk about the credibility involved with these witnesses in a little bit. But you heard him say exactly what happened. And keep in mind, he didn't have to take the stand. We didn't have to prove anything. I could have sat there, as Mr. Tosser said, and read the paper, or what did he say, twiddle my thumbs? Well, I wasn't doing that, okay? But we didn't have to do a single thing. We didn't have to put on any evidence. He didn't have to take the stand. He didn't have to, say, hey, here I am. This is it. This is exactly what happened. But he told you exactly what happened with him, and it was painstaking for him. He's 22 years old. He doesn't know any of you folks. Parents in the courtroom, people that he doesn't know. And he tells you exactly what happened with that sexual encounter with Miss Mitchner. That he picked her up. He even locked the door when he picked her up. Do you think he picked her up like this under the arms, like she says, and carried her into the bedroom? Or do you think he picked her up like this and she had her arms around his neck? What do you think is more believable? What do you think actually happened that night, based upon what we know about how the relationship has accelerated from the last couple of days? You think if we get to the point where the clothes come off, and this is an extremely important point, and I'm going to give you the theory of why I think this young lady, when she took the stand, had a blackout, and she couldn't remember. And why she couldn't remember was because what actually happened is that she assisted in taking her own clothes off. And she didn't want to say that, because then she becomes a part of this. Because she's given the story, she's given this narrative that I blacked out. He took all my, the next thing I woke up and he was on top of me and I was trying to stop him. Not ring true to you folks. That should not ring true to you. Then when my colleague, Ms. Manesh, started questioning her on some of these details about why you can't remember, did you send sex photos to Mr. Anderson, things of that nature, what did she say? Some of you probably have it in your notes, but she says, to my knowledge, I can't remember, but that's not me saying I didn't, it's possible. Why did she say that? Because she knew that photos could be saved, but she didn't know whether or not we had them. We didn't have them, but she didn't know that. And so that was her answer to almost every question when she was on cross-examination about, well, what about, how come you didn't know if your clothes were coming off, or whether or not he took them off, and remember what she perceived? And at almost every turn, she said, to my knowledge, I can't remember, but that's not me saying I didn't. It's possible. You bet it's possible, because that's exactly what happened. And you heard from Mr. Anderson in great detail exactly what happened and who did what with who. There wasn't anything non-consensual about that relationship, that sexual encounter between these two. It simply wasn't. Regardless of what she wants you to believe occurred during her blackout. And never she even indicated. My colleague asked her, was there some reason why you black out? And she indicated she had previous trauma in her life. And I don't know, none of us know what her previous trauma may have been or what caused her to act the way she did that night. But at some point, she realized, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done this. She either felt guilty about it, or she felt ashamed, or she felt, I got into something I shouldn't have done. And she wanted out. And she got out of the situation. But the way she did it was the wrong way. She cried rape. She cried rape, and there was no rape. There was a consensual sexual encounter she may have felt guilty about. We don't know what was going through her head. But we know in very good detail about what transpired that night because Mr. Anderson got on the stand and he told you. If we're going to assess credibility, and this is what this is going to come down to, do you believe the young lady that got up there on the stand and had incredible memory lapses and didn't want to answer the questions directly, any questions that would put her in a bad light? Do you believe her? Or do you believe the person that gave you very good detail? Could you even remember what kind of music they were listening to over a year ago when they were getting this get-together? Who do you believe? Who was more credible on that stand? And that's one of the jury instructions that you're going to have in front of you. The law is that you can take into account the credibility, the ability to someone to perceive, to relate, to remember, and to tell you folks exactly what happened. You guys are the ultimate deciders of who was credible and who's not. You get to decide the facts. My colleague spent a good bit of time on cross-examination, and it was almost painful at one point because her stock answer became that, to my knowledge. To my knowledge, I can't remember, but that's not me saying I didn't. It's possible. I mean, it's almost like if my colleague had said, were you a pink elephant on that night? I expected her almost to say that she would have been a pink elephant on that night. She was going to say, oh, gosh, I just don't know. But I was kicking him off and I was doing everything I can. He had me against the kennel. No, that's not what happened. What's more likely? That two people are engaging in a consensual sexual relationship and they take both their clothes off. Or they're both completely naked. If this was a forcible rape type of situation, do you think it would be more likely that they're both completely enclosed, or that one person would simply have their bottom underwear off, whatever it took, to complete the act and be gone? That's a rape. That's a forcible rape. Both people, two young people, imbibing alcohol and whatnot, that both have their clothes off and are on the bed, That's a consensual sexual encounter. Now, I agreed 100% when we were talking in Ordeer about a person has an absolute right, even during the course of sexual intercourse or having a sexual encounter. You have the absolute right to say, time out, no, that's it, stop, don't, no. You have the right to say no. And I'm not even suggesting that you don't have the right to say no. You absolutely do. This young lady never said no. She never said no, she never said don't, she never said stop. What did she say? Why did Mr. Anderson stop? Do you remember? She said it hurt. She said it hurt. And keep in mind, this was after 30 to 40 minutes of sexual activity. I can't imagine it wouldn't have hurt at that point. But she said, it hurts. What does he do? He stops. He stops. He didn't wait for her to say don't or stop or anything like that. It became uncomfortable for her because up to that point, the encounter he was having in her was pleasurable for both of them because it was a consensual sexual act. When he realized that it was starting to be painful to her, he stopped. That was it. And that's what happened. Not this, gosh, I blacked out and he's doing these things to me and has me against a dog crate and gosh, I can't remember it's possible. Some of these other witnesses, I wouldn't call them sophisticated witnesses. Okay? They didn't get up here and try to come up with some sort of story to get their friend out of this situation. They came in, they told you what happened, what they remembered and what they saw. And what they did see was that she was romantically aggressive towards him, kissing him. They were a couple. He felt like a fifth wheel because this was kind of a double date situation between Gwen and Jace that didn't pan out. But between Chase and Lexus, that seemed like it was going the way that they had anticipated it was going to go. And Mr. Mom simply takes off at some point. He leaves. Jace McGarvey, he told you exactly what he saw. That she was sexually aggressive towards him. He pulled Chase out of the bedroom at one point to get him to come outside and shotgun a beer. Okay? They didn't come in here to cook up some sort of story, and they were certainly able to perceive and remember what happened that evening. And then we look at the officer, Mr. Canan, Officer Canan from Washington Police Department. You know, thank God we have law enforcement, really. And I say that in all honesty because they have a difficult job. They're thrown into a situation where people tell them something and they take it at face value. Okay, well, we're gonna gather up evidence, we're gonna take pictures, we're gonna get statements from people. You know, they're doing their job. But they weren't there. They weren't there in the bedroom. They weren't there when this relationship happened. They didn't see Miss Mitchner, you know, help Chase get her bra off because he was having a tough time with it. They didn't see that. They didn't know what went on. But remember what Officer Canan said when I had him on cross, and I said, did she ever tell you she blacked out? And what was his response? He was like, what? No. She didn't tell anybody that. The nurse, Miss Schrader, remember, you're gonna see her, the statement that what'd she say? You remember? That she took down verbatim what was said? And nothing in there about this young lady who blacked out. Who blacked out? And she said there's even a portion in the forms for that to determine. She's fumbling through it looking for it. No, there's no blackout. Do you know why? Didn't happen. That was something that she came up with. She came up with it prior to trial, so she didn't have to admit what was actually going on. That was her easy out. Miss Mitchner decided that she wanted to leave. Do we remember how long that was after their sexual encounter? Remember what Gwen said? It's 20 minutes. They spent 20 minutes. I could stand here right now and say, let's follow the second hand around the clock and see how long a minute is. And then you think about what that would be like. 20 minutes. You know, they sit there for 20 minutes. And remember what Jace McGarvey said? What was going on during that 20 minutes? And what Mr. Anderson testified about on the stand? What were they doing during that 20 minutes? She was on the futon with him, and they were cuddling, kissing, they were still, she was wearing his clothes. She's wearing his clothes. You know, up to that point, they may have still felt that this was the night that she was gonna stay overnight, as she had texted him about. She's certainly wearing his sweatpants, his shirt. But something happened. Something happened to make her say, "You gotta get out of here. Whatever it takes, you gotta get out of here." Calls are going back and forth, and you know, I don't know that we can actually discern, you know, who called who about what. But I would, you know, for argument's sake, you know, admit there was some sort of ruse to get out of there. That's fairly obvious. So maybe Austin did call, maybe her boyfriend did call her, and she got upset and felt bad about it and wanted out of there. That's certainly her right to do that. But it's not her right to, once she gets back to where she's really living, which was Austin's mom's house. Remember who convinced her to call the police? Austin's mom. Austin's mom got her to call 911. And because several of her friends at this point realized that, hey, something's probably gone on between Chase and Alexis here. And that's gonna get back to the boyfriend, you know, if it hadn't already. If it hadn't already, consider for a minute that Rihanna or Gwen, when Gwen was making all those telephone calls, if she had been on the phone with Austin, we don't know that, but that's certainly a possibility. She may have been on the phone with Austin, and Austin finds out that she's in the bedroom in here with Chase. And then, how am I gonna get out of that one? Yeah, I know. It wasn't willingly. It wasn't willingly. He raped me. It was rape. Now, is it plausible that a young lady that has memory problems, perception problems, trauma in her life, is it so unlikely that she wouldn't do that? Think to yourselves. Think to yourselves about that. And think about all the evidence that you saw come across here is completely consistent with that. Completely consistent. Other than her saying, I said no, I said don't, I said stop, I said everything under the world, I was kicking him with my feet, he had me like a goalpost, he was doing this, that, and the other thing to me. Does that ring true to you? Did that sound credible? Did it? Now think about this. We all agreed that this is one of those types of cases that you have to take seriously. It isn't something that we're just taking a little money out of somebody's pocket. We're talking about people's lives here. And I don't tell you that for sympathy. I tell you that in order for you to understand the gravity of this situation, the gravity of the charge, and to be careful in your deliberations. Okay? This case seriously. Do you remember what Mr. Vutasovich was trying to get you to admit during voir dire? That if I had one good witness, would that be enough? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you had one very good witness this morning, and that was Mr. Anderson. He didn't falter. He didn't try to tell you something was blue when it was black, or up when it was down. Okay? He got on the stand and he told you the truth. And you think about which rang truer, Miss Mitchner up there or Mr. Anderson up